So here's the thing. These trade updates are technically the absolute opposite of a trade update, but because of what we have seen in the past, this trade update / non-trade update, pseudo-quasi-trade update actually probably, maybe even could be a real-life trade update, and I am getting my tongue twisted just speaking into this microphone and making this video. Today, we are talking about Vancouver Canucks defenseman Filip Hronek. Not because he's going to get traded for sure, but because of the conversations we have seen about him potentially getting traded and what these might actually indicate. Filip Hronek is 28 years old, 6 feet, 187, a right-handed D-man who is making $7.25 million a year till the end of 2032. As a certain agent would always love to point out, he is on a no-movement clause. He is not able to be moved wherever the Vancouver Canucks want. If Hronek gets traded, it's gonna be because he okayed the destination. Now, that's important. Keep that in the back of your minds as we continue our conversation here. Phil Hronek this season on pace for 46 points in 82 games, which would just be 2 points off of the stellar season he had to open up 23-24 with Vancouver. Now, it's funny because this year the Canucks were absolutely on top of the world, and Phil Hronek had a decent year. The only reason I say decent and not great is because to open up the season, I'm pretty sure Hronek had like a 15-game point streak or something crazy like that. Actually, no, we can just look at it here on Elite Prospects. But Phil Hronek was shot out of a cannon to open up that 23-24 campaign. Yes, here we go. Look at the point streak. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games straight. Okay, not 15. Sorry, I exaggerated it. But Phil Hronek started out the season super hot, getting assists like crazy. The Canucks were winning games. They were doing so well, and then in the second half of the 23-24 season, Phil Hronek just stopped scoring. He forgot how to score. He went however many games this is without a point, and he didn't score much in the postseason either. He didn't get a point until the second last game against Edmonton, and then he scored what was a very last-minute goal in Game 7 to potentially give the Canucks hope. That was all he did in 23-24. The fact that this season Phil Hronek is on pace for roughly the same amount of points, despite the fact that the Vancouver Canucks are absolutely terrible, is noteworthy because, firstly, you think about the team being bad. Yes, of course. Worse team includes worse chances to getting points. But at the same time, Phil Hronek is now the number one defenseman on Vancouver. He's getting all the power play time. He kind of needs to, because, what, you going to toss Steve Bouillon to the Wolves and have him as the 25-a-night-minute guy that Quinn Hughes was at some points? No. Phil Hronek is extremely important in Vancouver because he's the best defenseman by a long shot. He needs to be the best defenseman by a long shot. But because he is good, and because he is on a pretty decent contract, because he's 28, and because the Vancouver Canucks are sellers, you can make the debate that a Filip Hronek trade probably should be in the back of Vancouver's mind at the moment. Which is why you had Elliotte Friedman going out there and saying on 32 Thoughts on the weekend, Phil Hronek has a no-movement clause. He has control over it. If he was available, though, I could see a team like Ottawa doing something. I could see a whole bunch of teams calling. Now, oddly enough, we just made a video on the channel about Detroit and Stevie Y getting interested in right-handed defensemen on the market. Could they trade for Zach Whitecloud? Who knows? Hey, guess what? Phil Hronek is a right-handed defenseman. Why not send him back over to the team that initially drafted him a decade ago in 2016? I jest. But Phil Hronek being mentioned by name by Elliotte Friedman as a potential Ottawa Senators trade target obviously is a pretty interesting idea. We have spoken about this already. The Sens have Zub, Jensen, and Jordan Spence on their right side on D. There is room to improve. I'd say Chabot and Sanderson are both awesome players. Zub and Jensen have their moments, but you can get better than this. And Phil Hronek playing with a guy like Jake Sanderson, I'd think, would be pretty good. He's already played with Quinn Hughes. Sanderson would be the second best defenseman that Hronek will have played with this season, because, goodness gracious, it's not any of the other guys the Vancouver Canucks have right now. But this trade idea by Elliotte Friedman was made all the more interesting when you had the agent Alan Walsh literally going out there and responding to the tweet. He quote-tweeted NHL Rumor Reports tweet talking about the no-move clause and Filip Hronek potentially going to Ottawa, saying that this is just wasted air. Great players are in demand everywhere, but the NHL is not fantasy hockey. Why bring up players that are not available for trade? Vancouver management and coaches are happy with Phil, and Phil has no interest in going anywhere else. Top comment from Ian says most Canucks fans would be happy if he stayed, and honestly, I'm in that boat too. I'm in the sell a lot of folks boat, but I'm not exactly in the sell Filip Hronek boat. If a team is offering the stars and the moon for Hronek, then okay, go ahead and do it, but don't force a trade for Hronek. The guy's on for a while. He's got years on his contract. There's no reason to get rid of him. He's a good veteran presence. He's the best defenseman on the team. They already traded away the best D-men once this season. I don't think they should do it again. But the interesting thing about Alan Walsh responding to the Filip Hronek trade discourse is the fact that he's literally going onto Twitter to shut it all down. Why is that particular part important, though, you might ask? Well, it's because Alan Walsh said the exact same thing about Philippe Danault right before Philippe Danault got traded. Yes, it is true, circumstances were different. This was back in the middle of December, this was right before the roster freeze for the holidays, but Marco D'Amico tweeted out, sources indicate that Philippe Danault asked for a trade, Montreal wants him, and then he inevitably got traded to the Habs. And then you had Alan Walsh said, you never bothered to check in with me. Shameful, attention-seeking reporting. Which is essentially the same as what he's doing here. Why are you talking about my guys getting traded? Why would you do that? Sir, no, he said the same thing about Danault, and then Danault got traded. Yes, please don't shoot the messenger. Walsh isn't worth the air he uses to speak. He is just 100% B. Okay, we don't need to get rude here, I would say. Players with no move clauses literally move all the time, Alan. Phil has probably given the okay to Alan in order for that message to go out. Maybe. Walsh just loves talking crap to open air, though. And that is also another thing that I think would make sense if that was reality. Like, if Filip Hronek actually was okay with moving, if there was a conversation behind the scenes, something like, hey, we suck, and we're going to start rebuilding. You've got a no-move clause, Phil. You're 28 years old. It's okay if you don't want to stay with us as we go through a rebuild, retool, hybrid, whatever you want to call it. Do you give us permission to trade you to whichever team? And if Filip Hronek is like, yeah, okay, fine. Like, that's okay. The agent probably knows that, but the agent is not going to let his client and his name get out there in order to reduce his trade value. He's got to go out there and keep the facade up. Assuming Filip Hronek is actually okay with getting traded and this Friedman report is worth thinking about, then Alan Walsh is doing his job to do damage control. He's trying to extinguish that flame for the Ottawa Senators. Of course, no guarantees as to whichever team is going to make a trade or even ask for Filip Hronek, but Elliotte Friedman doesn't go out there and just spew whatever he wants with no reason. He usually has some sort of a foundation for most of the things that he says. So with that in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of Filip Hronek getting traded? Do you think the Canucks should explore trading him? And if it's to a team like Ottawa, how does that make you feel? What do you want from the Ottawa Senators in a Filip Hronek swap? Let me know in the comments all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on. And bye.